You're watching The Beer Garden, your landscape industry podcast that's best enjoyed with a beverage.
Welcome to the Beer Garden. I am Jason Hoke, and as always, I'm joined by Brandon Comstock. Today, hello. Today, we're excited to be chatting about a topic that I think is relevant to any business, but especially to the landscape and trades industry businesses. We're going to be diving deep into training programs. So, if you have ever hired someone and basically just thrown them to the wolves out in the field and expected them to just kind of learn their way out on the tools. I'm certain we've all done it at one point or another. But we're here to tell you that there is a better way and hopefully break down some tangible steps that you can take to implement a rock solid training and development program. Before we get into that, though, let's talk about what we're drinking today. And Brandon, I'll let you kick it off.
Yes, sir. I am having the Mount Crushmore. Again, you've probably heard about this one. I still had one in the fridge,
Nice.
a couple in the fridge. Bandit Peak Brewing, local brewery here. Kind of a cool can.
It is cool. I like that. Nice. Where's that made?
In Calgary, I think. Yep.
Cool.
Yep, right here at my home. It says do not drink and drive on it. Understood. It's very good. Very good beer. Highly recommend.
Thanks. Cool. Today I will be drinking from Omegang Brewery. This is Cooper's Hop. It's a triple IPA.
Omegang.
Yeah.
Dude, that's a cool looking can.
Yeah, isn't it? Get my camera to focus here a little bit. 10.5 ABV. So it's a big beer.
Oh, this is 4.4. 26 IBU. There's a lot of stats.
There are a lot of stats. I don't know what the IBU is on this.
What does that stand for? International Beer Unit?
No, it has to do with like bitterness. I believe. Wow.
Yeah. I just know I like low.
Yeah.
Yours is probably high.
Mine would be high, but it doesn't actually have it on here. I was trying to find it. Mine would be very high. It's going to be a very hoppy beer.
You ever been to Mount Rushmore?
No, I haven't actually.
Where is that?
South Dakota, I think.
Cool.
I hope that's right.
Well, you can edit that in post.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cheers really quick before we start.
Yeah. Cheers. Sorry, I cracked mine early. It is a tall boy though, so there was, extra 20% to get at.
No worries. So let's dive right in. So we're chatting. I mentioned we're chatting about building a training program. I should say like training and development program, because as you'll see as we get into this, it goes a lot further beyond just like initial onboarding and training. But I don't know. I feel pretty strongly about this one. At ACA, so actually this was one of the first projects that you and I, LBN and ACA, partnered on to work on together for our businesses. Was developing a training program together years ago. And currently at ACA here in 2025, we're in the process of rebuilding that training program and kind of starting anew as we've grown and learned from some of our mistakes in the previous process, how to make that better. But ultimately, like a strong training program really helps, we all know, like get new hires up to speed faster. It reduces mistakes, but it also like improves retention, creates a path forward for your employees. There's a lot of benefits to a really solid development program. And like I said, it goes much further beyond just new employees, in my opinion. And ultimately, in the end, like this is a profit generator. Like it helps you see higher efficiency, better job quality, stronger retention, and overall a better company culture. So I'm excited to dive deep into this one. We'll talk a bit about like how to build the training program from scratch, the key components of an effective training program, and how to specifically create a program that helps all employees at all levels advance.
Yeah. I'll add to that. It also really helps during the recruiting process to filter in the right people and maybe filter out the wrong ones. The people you want that are, in it for a career, they're keen on moving up. They see a good development program that's going to develop them in their trade, and they like that. So it's very useful there.
Interesting point. It also, I would say, like expands your talent pool, right? Because if you don't necessarily have to go out and hunt for people who already have all the skill sets.
Right.
You kind of start fresh with someone who's a bit more green if you know that you've got a really dialed training program and you can get them up to speed in 3 weeks, 3 months, or whatever it may be with your program.
Totally. Jason, before we move on, I've just remembered I have to give a shout out to Chris O'Donoghue with a great Canadian landscape company from Vancouver. He gave me this hat and I told him I'd wear it on the podcast this week. So Great Canadian is, they've been around for quite a while. I think it says on this hat, 25-year anniversary. And I've known Chris for 8 or 9 years. Great company, one of the best construction companies in the Vancouver area. Awesome team. I know his staff and managers there as well, and they just do some of the best work I've seen. I've looked up to him for a long time.
Yeah, Chris is a good dude and very willing to share from his experiences. So awesome to see those guys celebrating 25 years this year.
Totally.
Sweet. I guess we should mention too that we're in different places now. The most recent episodes that we recorded and released, we were in person together, but you're back in the Great White North now.
Yeah, it's not very white, as you can see out my garage door. Spring is here, but had a good time down in Denver. We did our quarterly planning for Issue ID together, recorded some podcast episodes, drank some beers, had some fun. Something big happened while we were down there on your front. If you want to speak to that, I'm not sure, but
yeah, we can chat about that. Why not?
I'll set you up for it anyway.
All right. Yeah. Very excited to share. I haven't really talked about this on this podcast, but Serena and I welcomed our first and only baby daughter over the last, I guess at the time of recording this, she's now 2 weeks old. So Brandon, I'll just say thank you to you, Michelle, and Jonathan for coming in clutch on the day that we had to go into the hospital, helping us get everything ready at the house because she came a bit earlier than expected. So there was a lot to do in a short amount of time.
Yeah, we had a studio set up in Jason's living room in front of his fireplace. We had all these mics everywhere, all this lights, tables, tripping hazards, all kinds of stuff everywhere. And then we figured out that we could only use it for one episode because the baby was coming. So we came back the next day, took everything down, packed it all up, cleaned up the house,
built the bassinet.
Built the craziest bassinet. I didn't even know what a bassinet was, but it's this little bed you put the baby in, and it I keep saying shakes, but obviously that's not the thing you want. It rocks the baby automatically. It's like Bluetooth, some kind of hi-fi wearable technology, heated seat. I don't know. It's the craziest thing I ever seen though.
Not quite that crazy, but yes, it senses how fussy the baby is being, and it rocks them based on their fussiness, and plays white noise at the same time. She loves it, by the way. It's coming clutch. It's just kind of automates the sleeping process a little bit.
If you knew Jason's business and like his life, everything is automated, and we were making fun of him because he's already automated, like being a father. Parenthood, yeah. It's pretty amazing.
I'm sure.
What's that thing called? Give it a shout out if it's working.
It's called the Snoo.
Good name. Wow.
Yeah, it's been a game changer. I will say that. It's you can only use it for 6 months because babies are only in a bassinet for 6 months. But it is
the only product I've seen that came with a box, because they know you're going to just sell it again. It comes with a box with instructions on how to collapse and pack up the box
to store.
keep it to like reopen it and reconstruct the box after so you can sell it. It's
That
pretty
was
incredible.
That was pretty cool. The little deconstruction SOP that was included with the box.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate you guys being there and helping out for that. And like I said, excited to welcome, I didn't say her name actually, Nova Ruth. So excited to welcome her to our family. And it's been a big, interesting challenge here at the beginning, as it always is. And it's a very exciting time for us.
Well, congratulations again.
Thank you. All right. Training programs. There's no elegant way to
Well, you've been in all kinds of crazy training courses and stuff to be a dad.
Oh my God.
But
Nothing
anyway.
makes you feel equipped. They need a better training program. I need a certification.
There you go.
Nice. Well, let's dive into this. I think one of the first steps when you're building a training program is to be very clear on defining the purpose and goals of this program. Like, why are you implementing it? So one of the key things that I learned early on is that it's not just about what people need to know, but why they need to know it. And I think like when you start building this, one of the first things you're going to start doing is just listing all the skills that like each role. So you'll kind of divide your roles up into buckets. We'll get into this process later, but you start listing all the skills that you're like, oh, they need to do this, they need to do this, they need to do this. But that like why becomes really important because it's
right.
You'll start to see where it's like, does this person really need this skill set? Does this role really need to know that? And so you start to, I think, if you go through that process, get a lot of clarity around like what the expectations are of each of your roles. I would say like we are bound to do an episode at some point on employment agreements, but like you'll find that your training program and your role kind of like breakdown is tied very directly to your employment agreements. So like the expectations from each role and the deliverables for each role. So some key goals that you might find for your training program, most training programs like share these goals. Obvious ones like get new hires competent and efficient quickly. Improve consistency and work quality across all your crews. That's a big one. Like I typically see people, wanting to start building a training program when things are starting to feel like the wheels are like maybe about to fall off, right? Like it's usually like as a company's growing and getting bigger, it's like when you have one or two crews, you can kind of be much more hands-on and kind of make sure the work stays really at the quality level you expect. But as you start to grow, that becomes harder to manage. And you really got to have some way to communicate like what good is and how we achieve good. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think something I was just thinking, when you have a great training program, we already touched on this, but it improves retention, finds you great employees, and you might be in a place, when you're thinking and you're feeling desperate for a training program, you may have higher turnover than you like. The kind of funny thing there is that having a great training program can make you feel more comfortable if you have higher turnover. Maybe it's because your market might increase, the turnover that you have. But I would use, fast food or McDonald's as an example. Like if an employee leaves McDonald's, they're not super worried because they can get someone up to speed very, very quickly on the skills that they need. So while it gives you, the employee retention and attracting the right staff, it also reduces the risk or the pain of having employees leave and needing to hire someone and train someone new if you have a great program.
Totally. And one of those reasons for turnover prior to having a training program might be the fact that, especially if you're losing like your best performers, typically you're like relying on those best performers to train people. Like we call it training through osmosis. Like you just throw the new guys with your best performing employees always. So that can be taxing and draining on your best employees, right? Where it's like there's no formal training program. They just get new guys thrown at them who have no skills. So they're constantly like in a state of trying to get people up to speed. Like that can be draining as a top performer when you want to just like go and crush. And the right type of training program turns many more employees into those great employees and builds a structure for that process. So they're not getting people who are just like completely green out of the gates, and they're incentivized to like help those people out, and there's a path for it rather than just like, oh, this again, I'm being thrown someone brand new.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you're much further along. I know you're building your kind of rebuilding, or you're always building your program, but yeah, we've been in that kind of training through osmosis state, especially on certain skills, or certain kind of seasons, for longer than I'd like to admit. It certainly adds pain, and one thing it does is it takes your best staff and it has them. It kind of just slows everyone down, right? They're just spending time doing the training and teaching people out in the field, rather than it being a structured system that outputs great staff.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So yeah, those are some of the reasons typically that we see people building training programs. Mostly, I would say probably everyone tackling this has some component of those, but you might have other reasons that you're diving into to doing this as well. Another one that's not that we didn't list on here, but that I could think of is like setting your business up to be repeatable and sellable. A lot of people
Sure.
have like selling their business on their mind, right? And that's going to be one of the first things that someone's going to look at is like, what's your process to when I'm buying the business and I'm taking it over? Like, maybe I don't know anything about landscaping. I'm just buying this business and getting into it. Like, what's the process for getting people up to speed? Do you have one? Built to Sell is a great book that kind of touches on that a little bit, among other things in that book.
Yeah, that is a great book.
Yeah. Cool. So let's talk about like the first step. Actually, I want to pull a bit of an audible here. I touched on it briefly, but I want to talk about that role breakdown a little more before we get into like the kind of onboarding and initial training process. Like, one of the first steps that I found very helpful is just really simple, like, but it can take a lot of time. And we just started with a spreadsheet, and across the top in the column headers, we listed all the different roles in our business. So when we started, it was just the first time we did this, it was technician, crew lead. We had a role called team captain, production manager, and that was about it. When we finished going through this process, what we found was we had tech level 1, tech level 2, crew lead level 1, crew lead level 2, and so on and so forth. So we actually divvied up those positions, because what we found, kind of going back to that why, is like there is a difference between our different technician levels. Like someone who's brand new and green, like we just want to get them up to speed on like the core competencies,
Like a first 90-day kind of employee versus still a tech or a laborer or worker, or whatever you call them, or an apprentice, but they've been with you for a year. They're going to know way more than, yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And we just found it made sense to kind of divvy that up. And so we listed the roles across the top. Then down through each of those columns, we started in all the different rows, we started just listing the different skills that we felt that role required, and thinking of it from like the standpoint of like each one of these things that we list in here is going to be an SOP. Like it's going to be a training module that we're going to build. So it might be something like technology, like understanding, for us that's very important, understanding the technology we use, and we would list them, like T-Sheets, which is our time clock software. At the time it was Jobber, so they need to understand how to use Jobber, they need to understand how to use this, they need to understand how to use this. And again, crew leads probably have to understand more of that than technicians do, so we would divvy that up between the different roles. Then we would get into the actual skills themselves, so it might be like operating an aerator, operating a mower, kind of divvying up those skills. And when you get into the crew lead roles, it might include things like leadership, like site management, job management, how to coordinate a crew on a job site, those sorts of things. So
we had separated, also curious how you did it, but we separated, equipment from the service. And then we kind of had a general bucket. So general bucket was like all of the things that are not related to equipment and service, all the safety related things, how to use the software, etc. So if someone might need to learn how to use a backpack blower, a leaf blower, for example, but we use that in many services. Just because you can use a backpack blower and a rake and a tarp doesn't mean you know how to do a spring cleanup. So we treated those modules differently when we had ours built.
Yeah, we did the same thing. I think that was something that we got from you guys when we built that together, was we did the equipment, so the operation of the equipment, and then the services that use those different pieces of equipment. Those were all separate. We lumped all like the equipment safety and all those sorts of things in with the equipment one. Those are just chapters in that particular.
General would have also like loading and tying equipment down, like securing equipment on trailers, that type of thing.
Yep. Yeah, we had that. And that actually is a good transition into my next point, is once you start listing all this stuff, you'll kind of find like the buckets that they fall in. And so what we did was we kind of categorized them. So like technology, I mentioned earlier, was a category, and then it had all the different technologies under it. Customer service was a category. Like a tech might just have to understand the basics of customer service, like their general appearance and expectations on site, not smoking, almost more like policy sort of stuff. Whereas a crew lead might have to actually understand like how to interact with a customer, how to sell a customer potentially. Like our irrigation reps have to know how to sell a customer. So they have a lot more in their customer service section. There was a safety section. There was a general section, like you mentioned. There was equipment section, and then services section. And so you organizing it that way I found very helpful, because then you start to think of things more in those buckets. You're like, oh right, we forgot about this. One thing I will say is that like this is for sure, as Brandon alluded to, like an ever evolving process. You're never, I don't think, ever really done with a training and development program, because you're kind of always evolving your business. And so it needs to become like part of the fabric of your business, because if you add a service, for example, you have to add all of the things that go along with that service to your training program. If you change the way you do something within your business, that needs to be updated or changed within all your SOPs. So this is like an ever evolving thing. But point being, to wrap up,
it's also sorry. Go ahead, Jay.
Oh, I was just going to say that to wrap up kind of that initial role breakdown, is like, that is where I typically would start, is just like, what are the things we're even going to tackle? And that'll act as a project outline for the next steps that we're going to cover here.
Right. I can't remember if we've recorded an episode on like fleet and equipment standardization. Did we?
No, I don't think we have, actually. I know it's in the list.
This is just a great example of one of the reasons that's important. So I'm talking about having all the same, skid steer brands, or all the same, mowers or line trimmer brands and makes and models and so on. Because if you build a piece of training for, an Echo backpack blower, but you have Echo, Stills, Red Max, whatever, and Husqvarna's, then everything is slightly different. So it's really nice if you can standardize things. And eventually we'll record an episode on that if we haven't already. But training is one of those things, so that anyone in the company that's trained on backpack blowers can use one of the backpack blowers. They all use the same fuel, have the same, switches and things like that, parts.
Totally. And to continue on that point, like your operators manuals are going to become your best friend when you're developing these training programs. Like especially when you get into equipment maintenance and but even the operation of equipment, like there's like, you're going to be diving deep into those operators manuals and pulling that stuff into your own little training SOPs on those things.
Sure.
We're doing one right now that we didn't do the first go around, that I really wish we would have early on. A series of SOPs on truck setups kind of by season. So this is tied to like the period boards thing, which I know we've talked about in previous episodes, but it's like, we're creating SOPs now on like, this is what a spring lawn services truck looks like. It always has 2 Billy Goat aerators. It always has one Lesco fert spreader. This is how they're set up in the truck, with a bird's eye view of the setup in the truck. Like,
that's a good idea.
That level of thing. And then, as you'll see when we get further deeper into this, we'll not only have a training SOP on that, we'll have a checklist that's associated with that that can get used in the day to day. It can include photos, like that aerial view photo, so that like consistency here is what you're trying to create. Like it's always consistent and everyone knows. And then it becomes second nature. It's like muscle memory at a certain point because people have seen
Cool.
it so many times.
Then you can inspect against it as well.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. So now we can get into the next thing, which I think is like typically the first focus when building a training program. Generally, it tends to be easiest to start with thinking about like new employees. So what that onboarding looks like and the initial training plan looks like. So in this, typically you're covering like what are the key things we're going to cover in the first 30 to 90 days. With landscaping, it's like we know our season is only, depending on where you're located geographically, like 6 or 7 months, and then you switch entirely your operations, kind of flip on their head. So you don't have as much time to get someone fully onboarded and up to speed. It's got to be pretty quick, and that's one of the benefits of doing a program like this. But generally, in that first period of time, whatever it is, call it 30 days, you're covering things like company mission, values, and culture. This is where you're starting to get alignment in the like why we do what we do and who we are as a company. Definitely things like safety, safety training, PPE, equipment usage, like we talked about, those sorts of things. This is where you'll get into like core job skills. So like the mowing service that we talked about, snow plowing, whatever it is, like the
Right.
actual core services. So you've got that equipment and that service that we just talked about, and customer service expectations, those sorts of things. Like those are the things you're going to cover right out of the gates. And it's generally like a very much just like a how to.
Right.
Think of this as like the fundamentals. Like if you're a sports player, it's like how to dribble the ball, how to shoot the ball, not necessarily talking about like how to perfect those things and become the most efficient dribbler or the most efficient rebounder. Like that'll come later.
Right. You like if we're talking about, we're talking about entry level employees here. If that's the case, then you really just want to get them to a place where they're safely contributing to the company as quickly as possible. They don't have to be your best guy on a line trimmer, your best mower, or whatever the case may be, but they should know what they're doing and be able to contribute very quickly. I would hope less than 30 days. Like hopefully they're doing something that's effective in the first week, and you can get them up to speed on at least one piece of equipment,
Right.
in the first few days.
Totally. And I would just say, like, I want to really lean into the first bullet point, which I mentioned here, which is like Brandon just mentioned, like the goal here is to get them out and actually producing and get them comfortable in this stuff. But I would also say like one of the biggest things for us in that first onboarding is understanding like the why behind what they're doing and the overall like how they tie into the organization as a whole and what the organization's all about. Like that's a big part of this initial onboarding, because if you miss that out of the gates, like you can't like, it's really hard to reverse that later if someone's
Absolutely.
like not aligned.
Understanding their path, like understanding how quickly you anticipate that that someone can move through the ranks in the training and the development in your organization, and then delivering on that, right?
Totally. Absolutely. So just like we're gonna get into like the thick of like building this stuff out and like what a finished product looks like. But a few things I want to touch on here is like use checklists. And the key thing here is like with every step that we're talking about here, what you're doing is you're standardizing your processes. So like there's a million different ways to aerate a yard, but you're saying like this is the way ACA aerates a yard or LBN aerates a yard or a property. Um, so you're creating standardized process, and then you're creating checklists because you need a way to be able to say like, yes, this person gets it. They pass, like they're
Right.
certified in understanding it. And if your processes aren't consistent, you can't do that. It's like, well, yeah, that guy's good-ish, or like,
Right.
it's like, do they follow this process?
Yeah. And so then every crew is basically producing the same work in the same way.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I see what
So
you're saying.
So, So we're talking here about like that initial training, that initial onboarding. The key things is, like Brandon said, we need to focus on like getting them safely out and being able to produce, and they understand the why behind it. We'll get into like the how behind all this in a later section, but that's kind of the first step. And you'll spend a lot of time on that. Like our first initial training program that you and I built together was mostly focused on that, right? It was like new employees, not even new employees, but people coming into a role for the first time.
Right.
And generally, I would say you're probably going to start with production employees first. If this is your first time building any training, like you're probably going to start with people on the tools. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's where it's going to have the biggest impact on the company. That's where most of the safety concerns are. If we're talking about that versus the office and management team, who likely, has had a lot of this training over the years anyhow. It's good to, you want to standardize those things eventually, but certainly do the production side first, I would say.
Totally. So once you've got that dialed and you've kind of got your initial program for like a new employee coming into a new role, then I would say the next step is to focus on like your ongoing training, because I think this is a critical part that a lot of people don't advance to. And it's just like, okay, great. Like I had my initial training for my first 90 days or whatever it was. And then no one ever talked to me about skill development ever again.
Right.
And then I just had new guys thrown at me constantly after that. And like,
Yeah.
I think this is where you transition to focusing on ongoing training for existing employees. We've talked about all the reasons, but it really like keeps employees engaged, reduces turnover. It helps identify and develop like future leaders and managers within your company. So it starts to give you a benchmark for like who's most qualified. Again, think of it like a sports team. Like, cool, the first step was you made the team, and at the time that felt like the biggest hurdle in the world just to make it onto a professional team. But now it's like, okay, how do we develop these new rookies coming in to be like Hall of Famers?
Right.
And that's what we're focusing on here. So like, how do we develop them? How do we grow them? What is their process like? What resources do we give them to be able to develop themselves? And that's something we'll touch on a lot later, but like, how do we allow them to be self-driven? And this could look like a lot of different things. It could be, kind of similar to your initial training program, where it's like, resources and content that they can digest and go through a certification process. It could be regular skill building, like sessions that you schedule. So like every month we're going to do a session, and each month it's going to be a different topic.
Right.
You can sign up and come to it, or you can not, sort of thing.
Yeah, I've seen that work really well before. There's a company in Vancouver. I don't know them well. I just knew some about their training program, and it was very self-directed. They would have, I think it was oftentimes evenings after work or a Saturday course, and they would have the whole calendar set up for the year. These are all the things that we're training on and when, and who is doing the training, and then the employees would sign up for them just like you'd sign up for any event or any course. And the employees knew what the boxes they had to check in order to move up, and they would just sign up and attend these courses.
Totally.
I never got it to that level in my business, but it seemed really slick. I thought that was a really good way they did that.
It's a really cool opportunity to feature some of those high performers too, because you shouldn't feel like you need to do all of this as the owner, or that your production manager needs to do all this. Like, it's a great opportunity to say, like, we're going to do a monthly thing. We're going to choose a new topic every time, and then go to your like best performer in that topic. So it's like, maybe the topic is like customer service, like dealing with customers, and you have one employee that you're constantly getting reviews back that like, this guy's awesome, like I want him on my property every time. Ask him to lead that session and like share some of his best practices. And like, obviously you want him to go through the standardized SOP, but like, what works for you, let's make that part of our standardized SOP, and then we're going to have you guide this session. So
and if you have the framework for your training and how your training looks and operates, you can have other people help you build it too. So it's pretty tough if you have nothing to just say, hey buddy, go put together, an aeration training module.
Right.
And he just like scribbles everything down on a piece of paper. That's not good. But if you can say, this is how we do it, here's the training on the training,
right?
Look at how we do push mowers, look at how we do, stand-ons and whatever, and then start one for aerator.
Yeah.
Now you can involve everybody in building the program just from a long list of items, and you can get there a lot faster.
Totally.
I think having a feedback loop on it too is really good. So while I'm doing the training, someone mentions something that's missing, you write it down and then give it to the office or whomever edits the training, and then you're always just making it better and continuously improving it.
Totally. That's a great point. And I would say like involving your team in this is like probably one of the biggest takeaways. If you take anything away from this episode, like I would say involve your team in the process. I mentioned that role breakdown early on. One of the first things we did is like we literally just put the positions in a spreadsheet, put it up on the screen, and I had my entire staff in. It was during the winter. We had a day where we weren't doing anything. I had the entire staff sit down and like, okay, all we're going to do is list skills that you feel these different roles need. And everyone was like shouting out skills. And that's how we ended up being like, oh, maybe we don't have just technician. Maybe we have tech level 1 and tech level 2.
That's cool.
It was the entire team doing it. And what was cool about that is like all those folks who were involved in that process, just from having them involved in literally listing out the skills that every role needed, they were super bought into the program. So then when we told everyone, like, 6 months later when we were done with the program, like, okay, it's a requirement now. Everyone has to check off all these skills. Anyone who was part of that meeting, who's part of the company at that time, was like, yeah, awesome. Like they're
a champion for it, right?
Yeah, because they were part of it. And some of them,
that's huge.
Yeah, some of them ended up writing the SOPs for them. Like same thing. We were like, dude, our process start to finish for aerating. Write the aeration SOP. We did create template SOPs so they're consistent. So we're like, this is how you build a service SOP. It always includes this thing, this. It's like an SOP on writing SOPs, but it always include this thing, this thing, this thing. So then they could just take that template and plug the information in.
There's got to be a cool way that you could use AI to build those. Like if you had the framework, just an outline document that you could upload to ChatGPT or something, and then a voice recording. Like I'm just thinking of people that are on your team that aren't computer savvy. They're not, they know everything, but they don't want to sit down and write out the whole process. They could speak about it though, or they could, get it to you in whatever way that they are most comfortable. You can inject that in, and I'm sure that it could spit out a pretty good outline for you to get things going quicker.
Not only a text outline, like our guys are actually doing this right now in this new version. They're using ChatGPT to help develop like the first like core text outline of the SOP using our templates. And they're doing that. But then they're plugging it in. I don't know the tool they're using. I wish I had it offhand, for like creating almost like a slideshow of sorts. So it creates a bunch of visuals to go along with it, makes it more visual appealing. Then they're creating video content, their own video content. And it's like not anything fancy. They're using like an iPhone to film themselves being like, here's the aerator, here's this piece, here's this piece, here's how you do this, here's how you do this. And then now just recently in the last week or so, I found a tool called 11 Labs, because we have a lot of Spanish speakers now at our company. And so they're able to take that video, upload it to 11 Labs, and 11 Labs will dub the video in Spanish so that it's now
cool.
a Spanish video. And obviously you could use ChatGPT for the text portions to like convert it to Spanish and those sorts of things. But like there's so many ways that you can leverage technology to like streamline this process, so that what used to take a week for like one SOP, imagine like having to recreate the SOP in English and Spanish and all this stuff. And now you can do it in like a matter of minutes. So
yeah, that's so good. Yeah. Cause you might, I never even thought about that before, how, you may hesitate to hire somebody because, they don't speak any English. Some, they speak Tagalog or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, you could just almost live have your training be translated for them to understand. That's
Totally.
really cool.
And they may speak English, but it's like, we're going to get into this in a little bit, but like, it's really important with building a training program to like come to the learner and how they best
Yeah.
learn. They may speak English, but they're most comfortable speaking Spanish, and they like are retain. Imagine like, I'm not skilled enough to speak two languages, but even if I did, like, I would much rather learn something in my native language than in my secondary
Oh, yeah.
language that I learned later. So
Oh, that's cool.
cool. So now let's get into this kind of like, I mentioned the role breakdown, and that kind of alludes to it, but it's like, I think one of the key things here is like building a progression. So like how someone can progress, thinking of it from like a brand new employee coming in with no experience. How can they progress in your company and move up? And creating like a certification system that goes along with that. So like, I'm certified at this, I'm certified at this. Maybe it's modules within a role. Maybe it's just you've certified by role. You choose how you do this. We did an episode already on, excuse me,
Like on standardized pay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
standardized pay, where we talked a little bit about this.
And
But
these things should be like married together, basically.
100%.
Like your development and your standardized pay, they're connected systems for sure.
Yeah, if you go back and watch that episode, you and I talk a lot about like the qualifications for a role, and one of the qualifications is like certified on all skills for this role before even being considered for that role. That's how these are married, right? Like, this is how they get certified on those things, is your training
Just
program.
this morning, I read on, I was on LinkedIn scrolling along there, and I read something that Mark Bradley posted, and he was talking about business owners, landscape business owners, of course, complaining, that there's high turnover in this industry, and their staff, my staff left because they found another $2 down the street. And he made a great point, and he said, they left to make $2 down the street because you didn't show them how they could make $2 more at your company.
I love that.
Like, if you just had a progression program, like if you had a training program and development program that said, if you learn these things, which we will teach you at this time, you can make $2 more an hour here.
Totally.
And I thought that was quite impactful, and he said it very well.
That, I love that. And that's really like, that's a perfect summary of what I'm trying to say here and what we're trying, like, that's it. Like, build a progression, show your team that progression, and tie it back to their standardized pay, but not only pay, like their role, right? Like, it's a requirement to move from this role to this role. You want that title, like you have to complete these training modules. And then when the position opens up, because we don't always have crew leader positions open up, but when it opens up, the first place we're going to look as a company is internal. So does anyone internally already have all the certifications to become a crew leader? If so, it's a no-brainer. We don't even have to post a job ad. Like, it's like we have someone internally like who can move up into this role. So that's the key. I would also just say go beyond like standardized pay, and the role advancement are a must, tying this training to that. But also like any like bonuses or perks for completing certain training. That could be as simple. I don't mean like you need to have like a monetary bonus every time. It could be like a shout out anytime that someone completes a certification, like a Slack shout out.
Well, I mean, depending on your business size, if you have ops managers or various trainers, other divisions, this type of thing, I think that's a great thing to base bonuses on, is how much are you developing your people in your division, under you. So if you have different locations or whatever it may be, I think that's an excellent thing, possibly the most important thing to measure people on. How well are you developing staff in your area of the company?
Yeah. If you recall our standardized pay episode, we make it a requirement. So for example, for you to move crew lead level 1, like you just have to meet all the skill sets. There's like certain criteria to move into that. But to move from a crew lead level 1 to a crew lead level 2, you have to have advanced at least two direct reports to the next level of employment underneath you, meaning they got all their skills and everything. So
the funny thing is, like, I remember us kind of, it's not a joke, but we were like laughing about it, I guess. Business owners are always often thinking of how they can save money, save costs. And I think the employee's perspective is like, my boss wants to pay as little as possible to me to get this job done. And once you and I kind of wrapped our head around standardized pay and development, we're like, so the goal is to pay employees as much as possible. Like, we want everybody to max this ladder out and just make a bunch of money, right?
Yeah.
And it's true, it's not a joke, but it's a funny, it's just a funny way to look at things. And I think when you tell employees that, coupled with a clear system that they can look at, you're like, I'm not holding you back. If you run up this ladder as quickly as you can, and I'll happily pay the bill,
Totally. It's a win-win for everyone. We always talk about the pie at ACA. We always refer to it as a pie, where it's like, the bigger the pie is, the bigger each of our pieces. Because regardless, we're going to have, call it 30 people that are all splitting this pie, right? So the bigger that pie gets, the bigger each of our pieces are. And like, if we have a bunch of high performers, our pie grows exponentially. Like, that's it. So yeah, I think that pretty well covers it. Like, you've got to have that progression opportunity and have it clearly outlined, and like, get it out there. This is something I think that we're just learning to be better about. Like, we always had that progression and certification process, but we didn't hardly ever talk about it. Like, from the time you and I built it, we didn't really do a great job at my company of like really talking about it and having it like right there, easily accessible for everyone to know, like, oh, I just have to do this to move up to the next role.
Yeah, we struggled with that as well. And I think that's a very common thing when you're implementing anything, is actually making it part of the day-to-day of your business.
Totally.
But this one is very, very, very important. Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say, but I'll interrupt and jump in if I remember it.
Yeah. Oh, I think that it's critical. It's so easy to like, you put so much work and effort into building any implementation project out, but a training program is a huge one. If you're not like utilizing it and getting it out there and making it so that your team actually adopts it, by just like making it forefront and giving them the opportunities, then you just did a whole lot of work for nothing, basically.
Yeah, you don't want to make a couple of huge binders and leave them on the shelf. Right. That was the first 2 versions of my training program, going back 7 years, 8 years, whatever it was.
Totally.
We're like that. Once it has to be part of your company's culture. Like, people just have to be, it has to be like a learning culture where everyone is just constantly training each other and learning and wants to move up in, skill up basically.
Right.
And help the business. So
cool. So for these next 2 sections, I'm going to get really specific with referencing like how we've built it and how we're continuing. Like, I keep talking about this, like we perfected it at ACA. I want to be fully transparent that like this is an ongoing working thing, and we are not fully.
We know what is perfect.
Yeah,
but we haven't lived it.
Yeah,
necessarily.
But in these next 2 sections, I'm going to talk a lot about like the structure of ACA's program, and there's certainly different ways to structure it, but I want to focus on some key points here that we've learned. And the first one is like using a mix of training methods to match certain learning styles. But I want to go beyond that and even just talk about like the progression, because it should be a mix of training styles. It should be lots of opportunities to learn different ways, but also there should be an advancement through the program itself. Like, we talked about advancement through roles, but there should be an advancement through the program. So I'll just talk.
What do you mean by a mix of training methods?
Well, I think there's a lot of books out there. Like, I'll talk about many different ones through this process, but there's a lot of studies have talked about like how people learn, right? Like, it's a very
like visual learners, like that kind of thing.
Visual learners, hands-on learners, people who learn better just from listening, like audio, people who learn from interacting. And you should be incorporating as many of those different ways to learn as possible. So for example, in our, like, I'm going to get into the different steps of our process here in a minute, but just in our initial step, which is virtual learning, like everyone has to learn virtually first at our company. So when they're learning a new skill, they get an online module that is given to them. So let's just say it's aerating. But even within that online module, you might think that's like, oh, well, that's just going to be beneficial to people who read. That's not the case. Like, you're in a single module, you're going to have a video of someone showing you visually and
I see.
explaining it. But underneath that video, you're going to have the key bullet points in text. So someone who reads is going to benefit from that. Obviously, audio is covered in the video as well. But for interaction, you're even going to have things where it's like little these are seem kind of silly, but there's a reason for it, where it's like flip cards where you like click to flip the card. So it's like, what is the average depth of an aeration plug? And then you have to click to flip and it flips the card, and it's like 2 to 3 inches is the average depth of an aeration plug. Just that act of having to click it is actually an interaction. And there's tons of studies that show, like, for certain people, that is like all the difference in them retaining that knowledge. So that's what I mean by different training methods. But I think it goes a step further than that, and also like building a progression in the training that incorporates all those methods. So I wanted to kind of get into that. So I mentioned our first step. You come in brand new, you have to do your virtual or like written content training. Usually that training is just like introducing the concept, whatever it is, right? So it's like this, they're your first exposure to this. So it's a lot of text, it's a lot of video, it's a lot of all that sort of stuff. I would recommend using a digital platform to validate. Specifically, it's like it helps you validate the completion of this content. You can, if you're just starting out, just
So
build.
is that like just to paint a picture of what it's like for someone like on their first day? Is that at your shop? Like you sit someone down with one of your iPads or laptops or on their
They
phone, you just set them in the office and they go through
they
it?
they have the option. So as soon as we complete the interview process and we hire them, we say, cool. So the first step to get you started is that you have to complete these, like this virtual training. Here's the list. We call it a path, right? So it's like all these things from that role breakdown. You have to get certified in all these. And the first step to getting certified is your virtual training. You can do this from home if you want, or you can come into our office and utilize our computers and our iPads and that sort of thing. Either way, we're paying you X amount of hours to get this done, because on
I
average,
see.
it's like more than enough hours. So like if you do it from home and it takes you 20 hours and we're paying you 40 hours, we're still paying you 40 hours. Doesn't matter. If you come in the office, it takes you 20 hours, we're paying you 40 hours. Like,
How many hours is it actually? Just out of curiosity, for that new person,
for
how
like a
many hours
technician,
of, yeah, like for the online thing before they're touching a tool?
it's probably about 20 hours, I would say, roughly.
Okay.
We'll pay
Okay.
for it. I think we pay 40, but it's 20 hours.
So a good day of work there.
Yeah. Yeah. So that virtual training, that's like a requirement to come in, and it's all the things from that role breakdown in a virtual training. So it's like clicking through, introducing the concepts. This is where we're leaning heavy into you're learning about the company mission, the vision, the values, all that sort of stuff. If you're a new employee, you
Right.
might be an existing employee who's doing virtual training for another role.
I see.
The reason I say utilizing a digital platform here is because the digital platforms to track this stuff have become affordable. If you recall, you and I signed up for a virtual
Yeah, it
platform.
was crazy.
It was crazy.
So like $7,000 a year or something.
7 to 8 grand a year is what we paid for our first LMS is what they're called, learning
Which is
management
like,
software.
it's worth it if it's any money almost is worth it to train your employees really well. But
At a certain
it
size.
was just
Yeah.
crazy for what our company size was back then and
Right.
what we were using it for. Yeah.
Now there's so many other platforms out there that you can get very affordable platforms to do this. The reason I recommend this so heavily is like, yes, I agree that you could just like type up SOPs and put them in a binder, and the first day is just someone going through that binder. But like what I've seen is like what Brandon said earlier. A lot of times that binder just ends up in the shelf on the shelf, and it's really hard to track that someone actually did that they actually made it through. And so the biggest value of these platforms, I think, beyond just being able to incorporate all those different ways of learning, is to track and hold accountability to the completion of the training. So They'll track like not only like did this person actually watch and go through all the modules, like did they watch the full 3-minute video or did they just skip ahead and like finish it? But same thing with the SOP itself. Like it'll track like how long they went through it. So if someone's just literally like clicking through the pages to get to the little quiz at the end and then they take the quiz, you'll see that. It'll on a lot of these, it'll say like they spent 10 seconds on this page and then they spent 3 seconds on this page. So that's why I recommend those. And then I just alluded to it, but definitely include competency checks at the end of each of your modules. So if you're watching a module on narration, at the end of it, they should have to take a little quiz. And then what we do is we require a certain benchmark score to be able to advance to the next level. So we've broken it into modules. So for all your services, you have to have an average score of 80% or better to advance to the next step of training. And we've
just like really quick there on competency models. So a competency model or like a competency checklist, that's if you have nothing today and you're like, I need something next week
yeah
to start training people on, that's the single document that you need. Like that's basically just for say a backpack blower. It's like a list of questions that ensures the trainer knows the trainee is competent. So it would be, this person can tell me what type of fuel goes in this machine. This person can start the machine. They can shut it off in an emergency, et cetera, et cetera. They know what type of PPE needs to be used, so on and so forth. So if I'm often saying on the podcast, like, just get started with something. Don't overthink it. Eventually get a digital platform and all of those things. But if you have nothing, start by just making a checklist. And I like to make it in the form of questions, like yes or no questions, basically. Then everybody can go around and get those completed. Yeah.
Yes or no questions is key. It can't be left up for debate. It has to be like, yes, this person meets this criteria.
Like, are they good at blowing leaves or whatever? I don't know.
So that competency model, the first one is just like part of that virtual training. They have to pass that. Then once they finish all their virtual training, so they've checked off all those things we listed for their role, like they've done all that in their virtual training, then they can move to sandbox training. Sandbox training or controlled environment training. It's like a way to actually do this stuff physically on the tools, but not be on a job site. So for us, we do that at our shop. We're fortunate enough to have like a lawn at our shop and a sprinkler system and all the stuff we need to check.
Or not a live job site, I guess. Like I've asked for training on a customer site before, like asked permission and said, hey, you're going to see us doing some wacky stuff out here today.
Right.
Because we're using your site for training.
Totally. Yeah, like I said, we're fortunate to have like a lawn and a sprinkler system at our shop. If you don't have that, you can use an existing job site that you have a good relationship with. Your house, you can use your house, a friend's house, whatever it may be. So the key here is that like there's no pressure to get the job done quickly because it's part of a route. It's like the goal here is to make sure that like a trained person who already, like your A players, are judging and evaluating the skill sets of these employees who have completed virtual training. Right. The thing I found really, because this is like one of the best ways, it's been proven every time to learn, is like actually doing the activity. So they've learned it to death in the virtual training. Now they're actually doing it. And that's a different thing. So they get some time to figure it out. They get to like watch people who are really good at it and then like tweak and get better, and then ultimately be evaluated on their performance doing it. I like to make this one self-guided. Like I like to make as much of this process self-guided as possible. So for us, we run a sandbox every Friday. Every Friday there's a sandbox. And anyone on our team or any new employees, like it's their responsibility to sign up for the sandbox when they have completed their virtual training and they're confident enough to come get their certification in person.
That's cool.
So they put themselves on the sign up list. They put the list of things that they want to be signed off on, and they might not get signed off on all those things because like if they list a bunch of like we're in July and they're trying to get certified on like all their mowing skills, but then also they're like, I want to get certified on snow plowing and this and that. We might say like, we're going to wait. We're doing our snow plowing and like winter skills later in the year, but we'll get you signed off on all your summer skills here. But either way, there's one person generally that's leading this. They might have assistants, but usually it's one person who's leading this sandbox training. And the teams coming in, whoever signed up for that, they have their list of skills they want to be signed off on. And they're just demonstrating that they can perform that skill in person, hands-on. And again, all the leader, the training leader is using is that competency model that Brandon mentioned. It's literally just like checking the boxes like, yep, they can do this, they can do that. Again, they need 80% to advance. But if they've checked 80% of those boxes on there, on that competency model, then now they can move to the next step and they're ready to go into the field for this particular group of skills that they might already be in the field as like a technician or whatever it may be. But now they're ready to start like getting in field training for these next set of skills. And that's when they advance to shadowing or peer learning, or we call it in-field training. This is where they're actually on the job. Typically, our production manager is meeting with their direct manager. So like if it's a technician, he's meeting with the crew leader and it's like, hey, Jonathan just completed his like this set of skills in his sandbox. Can you, over the next 2 weeks before we meet again, like evaluate him on these things in the field and see how he's doing? And so this is on the job training where there's added stresses. You're on customer sites now.
Who oversees the whole program? Like who ensures sandboxes are happening Fridays? Like what's that role?
For us, that's our
Staff or?
production manager.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's our production manager, but we'll say our office manager kind of supports the production manager in they're looking at it from the standpoint of like each employee and their advancement up that ladder. Whereas the production manager is more granular. He's focused on the sandbox training and checking them off and those sorts of things. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep. So once they advance into the field, they're just working in the field with a crew leader or they are a crew leader and they're just working in the field performing these skills. And ultimately they're being evaluated on actual in-field performance. So I mentioned like the virtual step is really just like an introduction to the content. The sandbox is like their first like performing in front of a person and hands-on. Now, when you get into peer learning, this is usually where we're measuring more off of like what we would call KPIs or deliverables, the things they are measured off of in that role.
Like production rates, like how fast they are. Is that what you're getting
Yep.
at?
Yeah. So now when they're in the field, they're generally being measured not just on like, can they run the trimmer safely and can they operate? Now they're being measured on like, what is their production rate on the trimmer? What is their production rate on the mower? Those sorts of things. And so we're starting to measure things like speed, quality, those sorts of things rather than just the skill itself. And they're also working under generally more experienced employees at this point. But again, whereas we used to just throw brand new people in with the most experienced people, now they've had to go through these other two filters before they even got to the more experienced people. So they've got the concept. Now the more experienced person is just trying to help them like really become experts at it. So like, cool, man. Like, here's some tips that I found that like make you a little bit faster, make you like provide a little bit better quality, whatever it is. And for us,
it's always like the messaging I remember always just getting back from crew leaders is like, this person, it's either this person's quality is really, really good, but they are like 10% the speed of everyone else.
Right.
Or they're way too fast and their quality is terrible. And I think that, and for the learner, that's hard to wrap their head around. They're like, I can't, they're doing a quality job and they don't want to just start running with a line trimmer and do a terrible job. And they can't seem to understand what to do. And that's where that Doragi acronym really came in for me when I was training people, And Jason and I learned this in the same at the same place in BTA, and it's demonstrate, observe, redemonstrate, assign a task, goal set, and inspect. And basically what that looks like is, hey, watch me run the line trimmer. Okay, now I'm going to observe you doing it. Here's some comments. Now watch me do it again. Okay, now like do it over there and try to do it in 2 minutes, and then I'll inspect your work. And that's a really good way to transfer skill and set the gap in someone's head, so they know if they're slow but high quality, now they can see like, holy crap, now I understand how slow I am. Right. So yeah, it's that was really helpful when I learned that.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. Like, that is such a powerful tool at every step of this process. Like Sandbox, that is what your trainer is using, is Doragi. In the field, that is what the trainer is using, is Doragi. Like, that is the format for like helping people grasp these different skills and focusing generally on one skill at a time. So it's like, we're going to work on trimming and running the trimmer until you've got that. Then we'll move on to like, you're running the 21-inch mower or whatever it is. So yeah. And for us, the final step of this, so like the virtual content, the final like check mark to be able to move on to the next thing was the 80% or better on those competency tests. The Sandbox, same thing. It was 80% or better, but now a trainer is checking you off on your competency model. And then finally, for the pure learning in the field, for us, the final check or better is not only a sign off from your direct manager who's evaluating you in the field, but it's actually performance against the deliverables at that point. So we set KPI based on what the things are. Generally, it's your like deliverables that are associated with your role. So it's like, can you achieve a month of hitting all of your deliverables in the green? So, revenue produced. So like that is a summary of all those skills, right? Like, can you actually like produce the amount of work that needs to be produced in a day, and in this case in a month? Can you actually hit the quality score? So this is actual feedback from actual customers at this point. Like, did you hit the feedback score? Did you actually hit your utilization rate? Like, whatever those deliverables are, or KPI that you decided for where they're at in their development. For us, it's like they have criteria that they have to meet, and then they get a stamp of certification at that point. That's like, cool, you're certified on all these skills, you've hit them, you're golden, you got all that. Unless suddenly you start to slip on all that, which brings me to my next point.
The stick.
Yeah. So my final point here is just to make training a continuous and measurable process. So I already talked about like tracking this. Like, you have to track the training process. So did they pass the virtual training? Did they pass this? Did they pass that? Like, how are they progressing through the training program? I think digital records make this easier. So we use, I'll give them a plug, we use Trainual right now. You could use a spreadsheet, like just something to track, like, did they complete this? Do they have the sign off? You have to provide regular feedback and coaching. So, what are the check-in points that you're going to check in with them, whether it's 30, 60, 90 days for new hires, monthly or quarterly for more seasoned employees. But generally in those check-ins, you're covering like their entire advancement as a whole. Like, I noticed in the last period that you got these things checked off. Here's where you're at. Like, you've got 5 more things that you just need the in-field certification for. Like, let's set a goal before we meet next for you to get all 5 of those things done.
Right.
And then making sure that you're adjusting the program over time. So what's working, what's not for your actual program. But what I alluded to at the beginning of this section was the like, okay, I've got my certification for all my roles or for all my skills. Like, it does happen where employees start to slip over time. Like, they've got the certification, they understand how the company, like what the process is for the company as a whole, for aerating a yard, for mowing a lawn, what good looks like, but they start to slip and they no longer, their work output no longer meets that what good looks like standard.
What about like safety infractions? So
Same.
let's say people get, you're still fast or fast and high quality on this piece of equipment or for this service, but you start to get complacent with safety and maybe some write-ups happen, these types of things, then does your program at ACA, like, would you kick someone back to like do the training again? Like, you gotta, like, you've lost at this checkbox maybe, or you have to defend it somehow. Is that something that happens on your end?
Yes, absolutely. I'm actually just trying to get a visual up here, but yes, so it's for safety. Anything that you have to be trained on, any skill set, that could be safety, it could be customer service, it could be a skill, an actual like in-field skill. All of those things require a certain level of performance, right? Like that's the expectation. Like your role, you're paid to deliver a certain level of performance there. So if you don't,
and you've gotten better, like,
yeah,
it's not meant to go the other way.
totally. But if you aren't meeting that level of expectation, then ultimately something needs to be done, right? Like
Right.
no matter what it is, safety infractions, quality infractions, performance infractions, something needs to be done. So generally what we do is we have an escalation process, and I'm going to find a visual for you here in a minute, but we don't automatically make you go redo all the training for this. Generally it's going to be like a verbal warning first, then it might be a written warning.
Totally.
And all of this comes with coaching. Like if someone's got a verbal warning or a written warning or wherever they're at in the escalation process, like their manager is now on high alert and needs to be like coaching them to help them get back to where they need to be on a performance level. But if all that fails and they hit a certain point in the escalation process, we flag them for recertification. So now they've lost their certification. Let's say it was a safety infraction, and it's like, okay, dude, you've had 3 safety infractions for driving.
Like not wearing your glasses or something.
Or, yeah,
trimming.
PPE could be PPE.
Yeah.
So it's like you have 3 safety infractions for PPE. You've received a verbal warning, a written warning, coaching on all this stuff through the process, and you still like can't figure out how to wear your PPE correctly. You've lost that certification now, and you have to start the process over. So you have to start the virtual training, then the sandbox training, then the in-field training. You have to go back through that. And sometimes that can result in a demotion. Because like if that was a requirement for your role, for you
or
to
a promotion to another company eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. It very well could result in you having to be demoted or promoted to a new company. Yeah. I think I have this here. Bear with me for 1 second.
All right.
Go ahead and fill the time here.
I'll fill the time. Let me see. One of my favorite quotes. I've been making a list of my favorite quotes. One of them, what you do not change, you choose. So if you don't change your training program and start improving your staff, you choose to have undeveloped staff, I guess. What else do I have? Simple scales and complex fails. Wow, that's good.
All right. I think I'm ready.
Good. I have about 15 more, but they get somehow lamer as I go down the list.
So thanks for filling the time. We actually get to give one of our friends a shout out here because we just started using this. Let me see if I can find it. So we started using
awesome.
a platform called Quality Driven Software, and definitely want to give a shout out to QDS or Quality Driven Software.
Martha Woodward.
Yeah, Martha's a queen. She's the best. She developed the software. So basically what we've done is for different like infractions or whatever you may call it, we've set like escalation policies, right? So this is a good one. I like the customer property damage one. For customer property damage that's client reported. If you're in our company, if you're in the green, it's just like a verbal warning and then a written warning. Like green is just like the very beginning, like coaching and warnings.
Right.
Yellow, if you hit the yellow, you've now triggered the recertification process. You have to go into recertification. Red is like you're on your final warning before being promoted to a different company. So you can see here for customer property damage that's client reported, meaning the client is the first one who told us about the property damage. You don't
You
get
can get 2, it looks like. Like you can get 1, but
Yeah,
it goes straight to written though.
you don't get any green. So if the customer reported we take client property damage very seriously. So if you didn't tell us first, you just damaged something and the client was the first one to tell us, you immediately get a written warning and you have to go into recertification because it's in the yellow. Then you get one more, and this is for the lifetime of your employment. So you get one damage that the customer reported that sends you to recertification. You get one more where you didn't tell us and the customer told us, and then you get promoted to a new company. But you can see, like, if you self-reported it, we're much more lenient on that. If you damage something, mistakes happen. We just ask that you tell us. You get 2 instances where we just give you a verbal warning and some coaching. Then you get another instance that's a written warning and some coaching. Then finally you get a written warning and you have to go through the recertification process. Then you're on your last warning and then you're out. And that resets annually.
I
Whereas
noticed that time frame. That's something that I think people always struggle with. It's like, what if someone's worked for you for 6 years? And
Yeah.
it's like, does the 3-strike rule apply over 6 years? But this is the one above it is lifetime.
Yeah.
So it's client reported damage basically twice and you're out no matter how long you worked for you. So it's really interesting how they lay it out. I like it.
Yeah, they do a good job with this software by letting you solve that. And then basically each time that one of these infractions happens, the manager records it in here and it tells the manager like where they're at for that particular infraction, right? So for customer property damage, it would tell me like, oh, Brandon's actually already received one yellow warning and gone through the recertification process, so he's on red now.
Right.
And it tracks the process for you. I really like this software for this. It's like really great for this tracking different sorts of things.
Simple.
Driving concerns. You can see like whatever you want. You can make different sorts of policies and set it up that way. So anyways, I love that we were able to give Martha a shout out because QDS is great for that. Highly recommend it.
Totally.
They do other stuff with QDS too. They do like customer reviews and things like that. We use it primarily for the HR policy tracking.
Cool.
Yeah. Cool. So I pretty much covered what I wanted to cover. Like the recertification one's a big one. Like just because someone had that initial certification doesn't mean that like you stop holding them accountable forever.
Totally.
Anything you wanted to add?
No, I don't think so. I think I feel on a lot of our episodes, I feel as if we're equals. On this one, I feel as if you're a lot more advanced than I am. So yeah, no, I don't have anything else to add. I learned a few things myself. So yeah, appreciate you sharing all of that.
No, I appreciate you. I mean, we dove into this together to start. So just something I enjoy. So let's get into a speed run.
Yeah. Let's do it. What is the best resource or content on this topic that you found?
There's a book that I really like called The Art of Learning. It's by Josh Waitzkin. So Josh Waitzkin was a like world-renowned chess player from like the age of 9. Like he won like the world, like Bobby Fischer level chess player. And then he went on later in life to become a world champion Tai Chi fighter. So this
Tai
dude,
Chi?
yeah.
Tai Chi. Right? Isn't Tai Chi the thing where you move slowly? Like
it kind of is, yeah. But it's like it's
fighting?
a fighting style, yeah.
Oh, I just see people doing that in the park sometimes. I didn't know that was a fighting thing.
Yeah.
I'm not very cultured.
He became a world champion of that. And so like to be a world champion in multiple different disciplines, like completely different disciplines, obviously this dude has like some level of like being able to learn things at a different level. So he wrote a really good book on like how we learn, the psychology behind how we learn. And I love pulling from stuff like that for these sorts of things, because it gets into a lot of the psychology, like visual versus hands-on, those sorts of things. I would also secondarily, I know I'm only asked for one answer here, but I would throw out the book Flow. Flow is like a I say sports psychology. It's the psychology of like optimal performance. Really,
Like
really.
flow state. Is that what it's referring to?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. When athletes talk about like flow state and like hitting like the flow state where they're just hitting everything, that's a really, really good book. That actually like will help you think about your processes and how you build your teams. And like for me, like flow state, some of the key things, just to really quick summarize, is like repetitiveness is actually really, really good, because you can start to build that like that muscle memory and you can get into that state of flow. But you need a certain amount of like challenge incorporated in there. If it's just brainless repetitiveness, you never get into a state of flow. But if you're constantly in a state of being challenged, and you get to the point where it is muscle memory, then you can get into flow a lot easier. And that's what like world renowned athletes enter and that sort of thing. So
I think I got into that in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. I got so good, but it was still a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. You probably did. I've had a lot with like music. It's like I definitely
As a drummer, you would.
Yeah.
I assume it's like repetitive, but sometimes the stick breaks or something. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's good. I highly recommend both those books. Art of Learning and Flow.
Cool. I've never heard of Flow, but that one sounds really intriguing. What is the best advice you've received, or the biggest win you've had through this?
You alluded to this, but like assigning an owner of this process as a whole. So they, like, you asked who owns this, who's in charge of making sure this happens. That's why we failed early on. Like we rolled this thing out and we didn't assign an owner of like who's going to actually make sure people are advancing through the training program and they're using it. So assign an owner and hold someone accountable to it. It could be multiple people, as we talked about, crew leads, like getting bonuses or advancement based on advancing their people. And then also making it self-guided where you can, like give people the opportunity. Like it's a great way to filter out people from your company too. Like I want people who, like, when they don't
It makes it more data based, like data, those discussions, like people will know probably that they're not doing well, rather than just scraping by.
Totally. So, well, if I have like 5 technicians and like one of them like is already doing crew leader training, and I can see it that they're already doing crew leader training even though no one's asked them to do crew leader training, when a crew leader role comes up, I'm clearly going to hire that technician to be the crew leader versus the other 4 technicians who didn't do anything. And ultimately, like, those are the people I want on my team, is the ones who are self-driven and self-motivated.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the biggest blunder, biggest mistake that you've made through training programs?
Not having a way to track people's progress through the program consistently. And it's got to be pretty easy to track. Like it's got to be either automated or like just simple to be able to see, like, they've done this, they've done this, they've done that.
Like you were doing training, but you weren't tracking every individual's progression.
Totally. Yeah.
I see. Yeah.
And then also not assigning an owner.
I've been there.
Like, yeah. Not having anyone that owns the program as a whole.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. Same to you. What is the best resource on this topic?
I think that if you want a turnkey way to do this, Greenius is a software. LMN now owns it. I'm pretty confident that you can still use Greenius if you don't use LMN. I don't think they come as a package together, and I'm sure that they don't. But Greenius is like I know you know, but for the listeners, it's like a framework learning management system that's built for the landscaping industry. So it's going to come with a lot of templates, a lot of videos and things like that just built in. So yeah, it's a great way to just get started really, really quickly. So I would recommend checking that out.
Cool. What is the best advice you've received or biggest win that you've had?
Just starting simple. Like I was alluding to that early in the talk here. We're like an hour and a half in, so as well. But yeah, it's just get started doing something simple. You don't have to do all of the things that we talked about here. Evolve to that later, and make it a pull, not a push. Like have your staff bought in, like Jason bringing everyone in to think through all of the skills required in each role, like involving people in it, even if what they produce is only maybe 80% as good as what you would have produced, it's still better because you'll make up for that on the execution side and the implementation side, because people will care and actually want to do the thing they helped build.
Yeah. Love that. What is the biggest blunder you've made?
Yeah, obviously making it overly complex. Like embarrassing amount of hours, and then followed by trying to implement it, then followed by tears after seeing my binders on the shelf collecting dust, that I'm like, why didn't people want to read my 500-page thing that I worked on for a whole winter, or whatever. And I had to learn the hard way, I guess. So just don't make it complex. Just start it simple and involve everybody, and just keep pushing it. Like I just said make it a pull, not a push, but keep pulling it. Just keep on it. Like keep talking about it every day. How's the training going? What improvements can we make? What should we build next? Just make it a topic every single week, and slowly improve on it over time. And before you know it, you'll have a great system.
Cool.
Yeah.
Love that. Anything else to add?
Not for me.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't have anything to add either. I hope that everyone found value from this. And
I do have one thing. Final results on this hat, Chris. It's digging into my friggin' giant dome. I like it, but
Chris, I wouldn't take that to heart too much. Brandon has a huge dome.
I have this thing maxed out. Look at that. So only 2 dots remaining.
You've only got certain types of hats that you can wear.
I rate this hat as it's nice. I really like I love Great Canadian's logo. They have one that's like GR8, like Great CDN or something, like Great Canadian. Anyway, I wish I got that one. Send me that one instead.
Yeah, and Chris, I didn't get a hat yet, so I'll be waiting for that in the mail. How would you rate your beer?
8 out of 10, Mount Crushmore.
Cool.
Yeah. I wonder what I rated it last time.
Someone's going to start calling us on all this stuff eventually. Cool. I would rate my Cooper's Hop. I'm going to rate it a 7.5 out of 10. Pretty good beer. It's a big beer, 10.5%.
Big old beer.
Pretty good. I did think of something I wanted to add to go back to the beginning. I gave, talked a little bit of update about our new baby girl, Nova Ruth. Did want to just give a little shout out to Serena, because she clearly did all of the work to bring our baby girl into the world, and she was a trooper, man. It was a long process, and just very cool to see her crush it the way she did. I couldn't have done it.
And even right now it's 8 p.m.
I know.
She's out there looking after Nova.
Yep, she is. Well, we drink beers and talk about landscaping.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, good catching up, man.
Yeah, good to see you. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to The Beer Garden. Please find us on YouTube at the Beer Garden podcast and subscribe, like, and enable notifications.